All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the Virtual Library Conference. We're so happy you're all here. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jillian Islami. I will be your Zoom host today. Our presenter will get started shortly. Just going to go over a few housekeeping items. This is a reminder to keep yourself muted throughout the presentation unless the presenter has indicated otherwise. If you have a question, please use the raise your hand feature, which is located in the reactions icon, or type your question in the chat box. We will do Q&A after the presentation, unless indicated by our presenter. If she asks for questions during, please be aware that this presentation is being recorded and will be available for viewing after the conference. Live transcriptioning has been enabled. You can turn it off using the live transcript feature. You can change the view by clicking on the view button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. We recommend speaker view. At the close of the presentation, I will be putting in an assessment survey in the chat box. Please fill out the survey for every session you attend. It helps us make better conferences in the future. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. And now I will turn it over to our speaker, Emily Davis, to take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are doing well. Today is the second day of conference. I do know it's a bit early, so I hope everyone has their morning beverage of choice. I just want to say thank you again for joining the virtual escape room library presentation, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so for a little bit of a backstory, I'm Emily Davis, a research and instruction librarian here at East Texas A&M. For a little context, I'm the liaison for health and social sciences, so I work for the nursing students, social work, even the criminal justice, political science. I'm assisting all of them. My research focus is in instructional design and teaching methods, so I really enjoy collaborating with faculty and creating content and lessons that both teach information literacy skills while meshing with their course content that they've already developed or they're in the process of developing that's still engaging for the students. I have some history with building escape rooms, both in person, virtual, and hybrid. I have been making escape rooms since 2020 and the virtual escape room since 2021 when we all had to leave in-person surroundings. Most of these have either been working with a public library or building content for my own tabletop gaming group. Admittedly, this entire experience was the first time that I made one for academic purposes, and I was so excited to be able to have that chance and to be able to share that experience with y'all today. Brief overview of how all this came about and how I got this opportunity and what happened. So last summer, we updated our library service guide and tried to work on different ideas to get our faculty's attention to increase faculty collaboration between the library and the different departments. And I honestly believe it paid off. While I haven't looked at the exact numbers for the entire academic year yet, within the first week of the fall semester, one of my nursing faculty actually reached out to me. She was teaching a research for nurses course and had a couple questions about different activities that were engaging and would teach research skills while introducing library resources. And with the beginning start of the fall semester, everyone was super busy. It's one of the busiest, personally, I think it's one of the busiest semesters that we have, at least from my experience, being an academic librarian. And because of that, we weren't able to actually sit down and meet, whether it be Zoom or in person. It just was not feasible. So through several emails and a couple of phone calls, we were able to come up with several different ideas. Ultimately, we decided a virtual escape room would be the best option. It would be engaging and would give us an opportunity to kind of assess where the students were at in their research skills, as well as some of their course content. And we also knew that we could always switch up or add other activities for the next course, since this is one of the courses that nurses are required to have. It took several hours of focused work and several emails. Oh my Lord, so many emails to design the puzzles in such a way that students would need to access not only their course content, but also engage with the library resources, the databases, and tools that we offer at the library. Um, That plus several test runs where I actually roped in fellow librarians to look at a lot of the technical issues, which let me tell you is a blessing before you release one of these. Getting as much test runs done is so helpful. There ended up being a couple of issues, which I will discuss further later on, that when we did finally release it, but because of all those test runs, um, students were able to reach out to me, and those things were very easy fix and did not delay the game or the content for the students. It was a lot of really great fun to create. My one suggestion, if you don't take anything else from this but this one thing, I would suggest not creating something this in depth at the in a semester that you're wanting to actually use it, unless that is something that you can focus on in itself. Or it's a slow period. So if you were like creating it for a spring semester, if your spring semester tends to be a little bit slower, that would probably be just fine. But like I said, the fall semester is super, super busy. And that probably wasn't the smart idea to do, but we did it and accomplished it. So it all worked out in the end. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail now about the actual process that we took. So once we had decided on a escape room for the semester, we had to set deadlines and determine content focus and which databases were we going to use, because there's several nursing databases we could choose from. We also had to decide what information literacy skills were we going to focus on, what uh, research skills were we going to focus on. Like, we had so much that we could do, and we didn't want to overwhelm the students, just overload them and have them go and just have them basically rage quit. So we had to do all of that. I had already scheduled a instruction session with the class for the beginning of October. So knowing this and the instruction, I would be showing them the databases and giving them a couple of research how-tos. We figured that it'd be a really good time to release this game shortly after that time, or shortly after the instruction session. This would give the students applicable time to actually complete the game, answer and ask any questions they may have about the content, while having enough time to do their semester project. Uh, but it would only give us a little bit over a month, along with all of our other obligations, both as me as a librarian and as the faculty member in her coursework that she was teaching. It would only give us that little bit of time to actually complete the game. Since I have created escape rooms in the past, I already had a process that has worked really well for me. I don't believe that I would have been able to do this as smoothly as I did if I had not already had this form in which I could fill out, or have the faculty member fill out, and then we can, communicate about this portion. So I dug out the outline that I had adapted. The original form is from Breakout EDU's game creation resource back in 2020. I have adapted this several different times over the years just to fit what I was needing. A copy of this form should be available in the handouts for this presentation. And I have used this form for multiple escape rooms, both the now virtual, I've used it for in person, and I've used it for the hybrid versions. Through trial and error, I have learned that this first page, if you don't do any of the rest of the form, this first page is basically the entire foundation of the rest of it. with this information that find on the first page, which I have an image of it here on the screen, um, you're able to create the steps that you need to focus on going forward. Um, Working with my faculty member, we actually went through this first page, this outline, and we focused on it. I feel that on this page, the really important parts are going to be the suggested time. So for how long you expect the players to complete the game. And the story are going to be what you really want to focus on, just so that you have your time limit, you will have the number of locks that you would necessarily need to make, and then you would have the storyline, the hook to get the students' attention, and just create the pathways that you will want the students to take. Focusing a little bit more on the suggested time, this needed to be determined at the very beginning of everything because through some research that I have done over the past and experience, I have learned that each lock, so to speak, should be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, and depending on how detailed you make that lock or that pathway. For example, for a 30-minute game, and that's what we settled on, it's about 30 minutes. We knew that we could create up to 3 detailed locks. So that meant we needed to come up with 3 key ideas for the lock, so one for each lock. We decided for this one that we were going to focus on developing a Pico question, since that's one of the main that's the module the students would actually be working in their course content would be developing Pico questions and actually applying them. So we focused on Pico questions and then evaluating sources using the process that the instructor, the faculty member was teaching, the hierarchy of evidence. So we were able to pull that course content in, and also in-text citations. So that's something that the faculty member had seen in previous classes students struggling with. So we incorporated that. We also were able to, on the library side, I incorporated nursing databases, incorporated our APA citation guide, and just resources that they had options on that direction, just of different ways to be able to look items up. The story portion of it set up the entire scenario. And this one, I really just let the faculty member take complete control over, because the faculty member knows their content, knows what's expected of the students, has experience where the students are going to be at. So nursing students, a lot of the times they're also doing clinicals at this time. So bringing that in, that clinical rotation that they're going to be doing into the actual story kind of cements it into the real world. And hopefully the goal is that they could be able to relate the skills that they're going to be using in this escape room with their actual clinical rotations that they're working on in class. So we use this as a beginning point for students. It also lets them know what the objective is. So while at this point escape rooms have been around for quite some time, it can be assumed that a lot of people would be familiar with the concept of what an escape room is. Having that actual objective lets them kind of be forewarned what steps they may have to take. So once we had a mapping, we were able to choose which platforms we had. So there's a couple of different platforms that we have access to. There's Google, and then of course we have SpringShare on the library side. And because of all the connections we were wanting to make with library resources, we chose to use SpringShare. So the SpringShare's LibWizard tutorial is the platform that we chose to use and to hold it. So I had all the access on this backside to be able to work with it. So we went with that, and I'm going to move on to the design. So then we started the actual designing of this. We have the wonderful outline that we did. We had the content. not content, sorry. We had the story, the stat, and is it content? No, our focus. There we go. We had our focus. And from there, we determined the different pathways or steps that students could take to complete the game. Now, you don't have to create multiple pathways to get the same answer. I was feeling adventurous and I was playing with a new to me program, so I hadn't really experienced LibWizard's tutorials yet. So I decided to add a challenge to everything, learn a new program, add multiple steps to it. So I incorporated the multiple pathways to get the same answer. This allowed the students to have an element of choice into which direction they wanted to go, uh, what they actually wanted to do, which is something that they would see as when they're in their clinicals, which steps they want to do first. Yes, they have certain situations where they have to go in step order, but when it comes to the research portion, they could decide to research this portion of the question versus this portion. So they had that opportunity to actually apply it here as well. Um, Even though I created multiple pathways, I did not create like multiple activities, multiple questions or anything. I kept all of that the same. Just one, because we were short on time, two, because I was already trying to learn a new system, so I wasn't going to try to overwhelm myself that much. Um, so I kept all the answers and all the mini activities, the miniature locks, the same no matter which section or which direction they decided to of the room they decided to do first. We had ultimately decided to include a puzzle or jigsaw puzzle. We decided to include matching, a coded message, and a crossword. And you don't have to include multiple puzzles. You don't have to include multiple different activity types. You can keep everything the same and simple. Uh, But again, we wanted to make this as engaging as possible for students. We wanted to give multiple things that they could try, they could play with, because ultimately the goal was for them to learn the material while having fun. Uh, this part actually took the longest because you have to design every little miniature activity. So we had to design the puzzle, we had to design the matching. So in this case, we were matching up. Oh, I just looked at it this morning. We were matching up a source, whether or not it was primary, secondary, was it peer reviewed? So we were matching those up together. Uh, and then, of course, we had a hidden message throughout the entire thing. So we had to develop that, like what was the message going to be? How were they going to find the different pieces of it? And of course, the crossword had to be created too. And so we had all of these different elements, and we spent a lot of time and several emails to acquire and confirm what course content we were using and what library content we would be incorporating. During this time, as I said, I was also trying to learn how to use SpringShare's LibWizard tutorials. And so I was smart in this case. I decided to do each pathway individually. So each pathway to the rock, sorry, not rock, each pathway to the lock, I did one at a time. So that's one of the really cool, good things about that I enjoyed about the LibWizard tutorial as opposed to Google. Although Google, you can do each pathway once. Um, LibWizard kind of forces you to do each pathway once. And that kind of helped contain my overenthusiasm of trying to do everything at once. Um, and this also helped to ensure that, oh, sorry. This also helped to ensure that both me and the faculty member were uh, on the same page. So she knew which part I was working on. She knew what questions to be expecting, what content I needed, when I needed it. And it also ensured that we had each pathway completed before we moved on to the next pathway. So even if you're not doing multiple pathways per lock, let's say you're just doing a single pathway and it's just very linear uh, escape room, you still want to make sure you have each of the individual pathways completed. It, now that I have now that I have experience with LibWizard and using it for escape rooms, I do believe the next one should hopefully not take as long, bearing other obligations, of course. The week before the deadline that we set, that's when I requested the help of my colleagues to actually start test running the game. I was nice enough to give them the answers so that they could test everything, focusing more on the mechanics, less more on what the answers were. I was also at this time able to make several different adjustments with this. I was able to get our accessibility librarian to also look at it and see what issues might arise with accessibility, because that's also a major concern with something at like an escape room. Uh, Once we had all of that adjustments made, before sharing the link with the faculty instructor, I would, once we had all those made, shared the link. The faculty member went through it as well, was happy with it, and shared it with her students in her course shell. And students jumped right on actually getting that done. I started seeing submissions within by the end of the day, and I was getting emails from students as well, both for issues that might have risen during that time that we were able to quickly fix, and also saying that they enjoyed the game and what parts they liked, and things like that. So before I move on to talking and pointing out like the different challenges that we actually covered and the solutions that we had for that, does anyone have any questions about the process and the steps that we took to achieve this collaboration? Okay, I will move on. If you have questions further, just pop them in the chat. So the challenges. With anything you create, with collaboration or just solo creation, it's not going to be smooth sailing, at least from my experience. Now that may just be me. I may just be a person that loves to encounter challenges to overcome. But this case, it still no smooth sailing. We did face a lot of challenges, but in the end, I believe it totally was worth it. The students, like I said, enjoyed the game. The faculty member enjoyed the process and being able to get to see something come from all our efforts. The biggest challenge I feel that we faced, was a rather common one that I feel all of us tend to face, is time, both on trying to figure out the time that would fit for the students to be able to complete this game while completing their other coursework and their clinical rotations and whatever they have going on in their personal lives, trying not to overwhelm them, trying not to overload us, trying to get all of this done. So time was a really big challenge. Um, we wanted this escape room to be available within a couple of weeks after I'd met the class. Um, so that limited the amount of time we'd had to work on it. I really suggest, if you're going to encourage your faculty members to do things like this, try to get them early, try to suggest building up to things. Definitely start suggesting things as soon as you can. Um, but having an outline, having a step where you can just set everything down and scheduling greatly helps with this. So even if you cannot get ahead of the game and try to get them to meet with you like the semester before or even during the summer, or even give you a heads up about it. So if it's something that they do on the last minute, because this happens all the time. It's a thought, we're just like, oh, this would be a really great idea. Let's see if we can implement it now. Having an outline or steps to already take is the great way to go. Another issue that we ran into is the different levels of experiences on both sides. So my faculty member had no experience when it comes to virtual escape rooms or the steps to create one, and what to really expect with them and the work that comes out of it. And then I, of course, had little to no experience with the LibWizard tutorials. So ran into a few snags and delays there as we learned what we could achieve, what was feasible, having to do research on whether or not the tutorial could actually support what we were wanting to achieve. Um, we're now both better prepared and have learned from this. So as we choose to extend this project to the next semester, we will be able to make it better. And that's ultimately the goal, is to improve on this and make a better experience for the students as well as those of us who are working on the project as well. Um, and because of all of this and the foundation, as I begin to work on tweaking things for the summer, the faculty member is will be joining me in July to actually be working more on the content and to make this game better. Another challenge that we ran into was the content versus the space that we were working with. We had to really nail down what we really wanted to focus on, what was important. So we spent several email conversations back and forth of just what are we going to do? There's so much content, there's so many different literacy skills that we could focus on, but we don't have time. We don't have the space in the tutorial to do it. That's not just going to overload and overwhelm everyone. So having a set time limit and following that 10 minutes per lock model, this kind of made it where we could focus even further. It restricted us, which is in this case a really good thing, um, so that we could determine what it is that we were wanting to do. The things that we focused on were largely determined by what the faculty was going to assess the students on and her course objectives and what she wanted the students to take away. So when she had that determined, I figured out what library services would better connect with each of them. For example, the students needed to determine Pico components and be able to connect the pieces that way. But why not add mesh terms as part of the Pico components? So several of our databases, they have the ability to just for the students to type in the Pico components to pull up, and that's the part of the search parameters. But a lot of those Pico components are actually done in mesh terms. They're done as subject headings rather than just keywords. So showing and leading the students to actually use the resources that we have to help them determine mesh terms, help them determine the Pico components, all of that put in that allow us to cover two things for one pathway because they connected really well together. Students were able to access the library resources so they could look up the mesh terms that matched what they needed. The final challenge that I think was like the biggest one that we had, of course, was what did we do about accessibility? We wanted this game to be as accessible as feasibly possible while still being fun and challenging. So we had to look at different examples of escape rooms that other libraries have used, both public and academic. We looked at different escape rooms the that are brand like actual industries have them. So we looked at some different option things there. And we were mostly trying to focus on what accessibility concerns that we were seeing in these other virtual escape rooms, at least the ones that we had access to. You can find a lot of them via Google. You can just type in virtual escape rooms and free, and several will pop up. And as you go through them, you can kind of pinpoint, what accessibility concerns you might have. I also reached out to our accessibility librarian during the viewing of it, and the puzzle to be in there, so the jigsaw puzzle. And while it's really cool to have it, they're also not the best when it comes to accessibility. Um, so a possible solution, and the one that we chose at this time, is to offer an alternative format for that pathway. I think going forward, we're probably going to take the jigsaw puzzle completely out and go with a different type of puzzle or focusing more probably on a logic or riddle style puzzle. Um, but we decided to, for our alternate format, we were just going to create the photo already completed, that the students could click on a link and they could see the photo already completed with the alt text of the important components that they needed to know. This did take away some of the challenge of the game. And like I said, we're going to look in the next rendition to be more text-based with photo support. So it should make the game feel more accessible while keeping the overall challenge and playful atmosphere. If you are working with faculty who are already aware of the accessibility concerns for their course, you might be able to use some puzzles versus others. But as librarians, our goal is to make everything as accessible as possible to reach everyone. Um, so this is a conversation that you would have to have with your faculty, as well as possibly someone who works with accessibility support, whether that's you have a librarian whose focus is accessibility, or if you are working with IT or your academic technology individuals, someone on staff that has a who has a focus in accessibility, because that's in a job in itself. Uh, so I definitely would say rope one of them in, get collaboration going on, and just have that conversation overall. Right. Now, before I move into talking about like the different options that we could have chosen from and discussing why we chose what we chose, does anyone have any questions about the challenges that we faced or any other challenges that they think uh, they would be more interested in? Yeah, so if you can, you may want to, when you're talking with your faculty, definitely reach out to your campus digital accessibility officer, if you're able to. The situation with this one, probably mostly why we didn't, is one, we do have an accessibility librarian in-house, and I'm not sure who they communicated with. They may have communicated with the digital accessibility officer, and I'm not aware of that portion. We are also on a short timeline, so definitely use any accessibility resources you have. If you have resources that, such like Andy, which can look over everything and see and flag things that might be an issue, definitely use those resources as early as on and continuously throughout the process. It definitely will cut down on the amount of time that you're having to go back and fix things, and just it makes it a little bit smoother going down if you start at the beginning with accessibility and not stop in between or try to meet those concerns at the end. Okay. So I did talk about there's, three different options that we could work with. Yeah, three different options. You have in person, you have hybrid, and then you have, of course, virtual. So at the very beginning of this entire collaboration, one of the conversations I had with my faculty member was what playing options for the escape room they wanted. With the course being taught in person and on Commerce campus, it was possible that we could do one of these three. So we could have done in person, we could have done hybrid, or we could do completely virtual. And while the process to create each one of them is similar, they do come with their own benefits and challenges. For example, the in-person escape rooms allow for more team collaboration and or an easy team collaboration, and can have a more competitive field. So if you do have students who have a more who oh Lord, if you do have students who benefit from that friendly competitive atmosphere, that might be an option for you. And depending on what pathways or mini activities that you choose for the design, the setup time for it can be a lot less for in-person escape rooms, but also the cost could be higher. So there might be components that you need to have, whether you're creating like a box and you're going to have them instead of locking a room, you have like a toolbox and you'll be like with locks on it, and the students have to figure out how to unlock a toolbox. Um, there's also the concern that it's going to take up space. So where are you going to be hosting this in-person escape room? It's going to be taking up valuable instruction time. So these are all components that they need to be aware of, as well as their own accessibility concerns, such as you may have students that are unable to make it to campus that day for whatever reason. They may not be able to be there physically in person. They may have some severe anxiety when it comes to the idea of being locked in. Claustrophobia is a real thing. Um, so if you're working with a faculty who would really like to do that in-person escape room, make some suggestions. The lockback scenario, maybe have it where the students, instead of to save time on setup and save time on designing and maybe even a little bit of the expenses, make it an actual assignment where the students group together, design their own escape room set to include certain components, including your information literacy, including them maybe meeting up with a librarian to discuss different research skills to incorporate into their game. And then you have now the faculty member has different content that they could possibly use in further future classes. They can have the students have create portfolios with this that can help them further on in their careers. There's so much that can work with this on having the students have more autonomy with the actual assignment itself, both saving time and such. The other option we could have worked with was the hybrid option. This option, I have not had a anyone in a professional setting choose this option. I really love this option. I've done it more in my personal life with the gamings that I do. Um, but I think this option kind of meshes the benefits of both worlds. So you have the benefit of working with multiple department collaboration. So you can work with the writing center, you can work with advising, you can work with career services, and of course, the faculty you're working with and the content there. You can work with multiple courses. So it does have that option of being able to work with multiple people. Um, Component, I believe it would work really great with your freshman orientation style classes or your intro classes. Um, so you would have that in-person component where they could introduce the students to the multiple campuses services. Um, while having the hybrid portion be more focused on the digital aspects, course content, things of that nature, and the actual researching of everything. Um, the major challenges that you would face with this, of course, is that you would need to style it where you would sync the in-person components with the virtual. This can take a lot of time and multiple test runs because you're going to be working with multiple departments and multiple things to work with, a lot more test runs with this one. Um, you also have to have concerns of the students having equal access to both components. So, for example, if you have students that are only on campus 1 day a week, will they have equal access to the in-person components? If the in-person components is to meet with a librarian, does that librarian have time to meet with X number of students in an X amount of time? So you really need to, with this one, have very in-depth conversations to discuss outcomes that are acceptable. What challenges are y'all willing to overcome? And what you would prefer to just avoid altogether. Ultimately, we went with the virtual one just because the hybrid option had a lot of components that just did not have time to work with. It just wasn't feasible in that having, little over a month to deal with. If you have a good rapport with the different campus services, and you have one person in like every office that you're already on a committee with or something of that, you may already have the connections and ability to have this all kind of set up in the background before approaching the faculty members about it or encouraging faculty member to actually come to you because you have all these different options. So like I said, definitely need a lot of communication with the hybrid option. Um, so those are definitely, we decided the virtual was going to be more accessible for the students and easier for us as the creators of the content to just be able to achieve our goals. Lastly, and I know what a lot of y'all might be interested in, is what results came from all of this. So once the game went live, we had a total of 34 students complete the escape room. So this was almost 100% of student engagement. There were, as I said, a couple of glitches. A couple of the puzzles weren't allowing them to actually input the answer. In this situation, it came out that I accidentally put a limiter on it that was not meant to be there. Uh, but thankfully, I was able to just kind of go in, immediately remove that, fix it. Thankfully, the students emailed me, and I was, like I said, rather able to fix it. Um, I also got several students that emailed me about enjoying it. I had responses back from the faculty where students were talking about it with her and what they liked about it and what they learned from it and just all that positive feedback that came from it. Me and the faculty are going to be taking these feedbacks, take what we learned from releasing it this go around and what we learned from the students and what she saw from the assessments that she did versus, what communication I had. And we're going to tweak it. We're mostly going to be focusing on the timing. That seemed to be something that a lot of students were struggling with was just being able to complete it within the time frame because we did put a time restriction on the game just to add a little bit of a challenge. You don't have to put a time restriction on it. That is a conversation I'm going to have with a faculty member. We may just remove the time restriction completely, um, and just let it be an unlimited time frame. Another thing that we're going to focus on is that we're going to tweak the instructions in a few places to help with clarity and try to make the focus a little bit better because there's a couple of questions and puzzles that we saw that almost all of them struggled with. That lets us kind of know like either A, this is not being taught accurately, or maybe it's a problem with the question. So we're going to tweak the question a little bit, try to make it smoother, definitely work on those pathways to make those run smoother and just overall just work for that clarity. Since I did have faculty that were interested in learning how to create virtual escape rooms and the components for it, I did hold a faculty workshop that in the spring. So we did the escape room was in the fall. The spring was when we held the faculty workshop to give an overview of the creation process and resources for creating their own virtual escape rooms. For this workshop, I actually created an example of a maze style escape room, which I have a link here, and later on I will actually show you what that actually looked like. I'm actually kind of proud of that escape room. And I focused mostly for this workshop on the benefits and the uses of the escape room, so the different ways they could actually incorporate it into their class, and developed a 6-step process for creating one that the faculty could follow. I also used this time to encourage faculty to reach out if they were interested in collaborating on an escape room for their own course, or if they wanted more resources for one, or ideas on, or just, maybe they wanted ideas for incorporating information literacy games, escape room or otherwise, into their course shell. This faculty workshop, I think, was well attended. We did have 8 participants, and of course, it was recorded. And we did have several others that registered for the course, so they all got a recording of it. We have received feedback of it, so that there are more that are interested in more of a deep dive and actual walkthrough process. So in the fall, I will be starting a series of workshops to do a more deep dive process of actually creating the different types of escape rooms for academic purposes. So I'm looking forward to being able to collaborate with these individuals. My future plans overall, as I stated earlier, we will be tweaking the game as we use it for this next fall. Since we have a foundation already, we are planning on meeting in July to make these changes so that we can have this up and ready to go for students, maybe more as a introductory to the concept. Oh, yes, that particular link, I'll drop it in the chat for the escape room. Yes, I will. Yeah, no problem. I'll drop that link up in the chat in just a second. Um, so we're going to be focusing on that. So we're going to make some adjustments of it, strengthen that focus and the instructions. We're also going to be possibly removing that jigsaw puzzle, coming up with some different options for it. And we also have the option of adjusting it from that locks format pathway to maybe more of a maze style, especially if we're going to use it as I always have trouble pronouncing the actual word for it, but more of a starting and a hook for the entire project. So we may use the maze style rather than lock style because we may not be focusing more on the assessment portion. We're also talking about adding a scavenger hunt to this. So this is going to be another game we get to put in here to add more of a in-person component, or we may just do virtual. It's one of the things that we will be discussing. That's going to be focusing on the research process itself. It was really wonderful to be able to collaborate with the faculty, to introduce the students to the library, and to encourage them with this research process beyond just instructional sessions or just consultation assignments. Overall, this process has led to more collaboration opportunities. I'm now in talking with social work faculty about the possibility of doing something similar for them, as well as toying with a couple ideas for using this as an introduction to specific databases, to the library overall, and as I said, creating a workshop series on virtual escape room creations starting in the fall. And they're just encouraging all of this to hopefully everything turns out where we'll have faculty not only working with me, but also reaching out to their liaisons and taking advantage of the opportunity of us helping with their course content, that they don't just have to teach the information literacy or adding it there. They can reach out to us and we will help. We will give them resources beyond just what is available on the library page. I did mention a couple of things that I was going to show y'all links, so give me just a second to remember the buttons that I needed to push for it. And I will share that link. Oh, that button is over here. Okay, so that link is this one right here. It is outrageously long. I don't share. Let me. Copy this link. Okay, so I'm going to drop that in chat. Yay! Okay, so this is the one that I shared with the faculty. I did use Google Site. Oh, okay. So I'm just going to show this one real quickly. And then if you have any questions, please drop them into the chat right now and I will answer them as well. So this is the maze one. As they enter, it's just all link based. Everything with the maze one is just link based. And then you have questions, they can decide on that. And then our escape room, once again, link based. They can just click and answer each portion as they go through. It's very high on the text. So you do have to work with each part separately. So I see that we are close to time. So does anyone have any questions? If not, I will hand it back over to Jillian and she can end things for us.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily. This was fantastic. And also thank you for the links. I was going to ask for those too. I popped the survey link in the chat. Please fill out the surveys. We appreciate it. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing all of your fantastic work with us. I've got lots of ideas. I love the Wizard and I love Escape Room, so marrying the two. Hello. Um,
Yeah. And please, if any of y'all have any questions, y'all can reach out to me. I am always willing to collaborate on any of this. Like escape rooms are a bit of a passion for me. So you can just reach out to me, email me, drop me a line, whatever the case may be.
Fantastic. Well, one more round of applause for you. I hope everyone has a great, wonderful rest of the day. Perfect start to the day with this presentation. Only up from here. Everyone's doing amazing. Thank you all so much. I'm going to stop recording.